Hello, my name is Damon Friedman, co-founder and president of SOF Missions. As a 20-year veteran within Special Operations, I've gone through many challenges due to my military service and time in combat. We felt called to start SOF Missions to serve our fellow brothers and sisters in arms, focusing on suicide prevention and resiliency. Our mission at SOF Missions is to empower warriors to find purpose and be resilient. Since 2011, when we started the organization, almost 3 million men and women have deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan. Unfortunately, the scars of war take a toll on their psychological, physical, social, and spiritual health. Many veterans feel a sense of hopelessness and a loss of purpose when they return to civilian life. They feel isolated and alone, unable to reconnect. And in the greatest of tragedies, over 20 veterans lose all hope and take their own lives. Our goal at SOF Missions is to provide veterans the tools and resources so that they don't become a statistic. We offer a unique approach to combating veteran suicide through a whole health, intradisciplinary model. The Be Resilient program is a 4-pillar methodology that addresses the areas of psychological, physical, social, and spiritual wellness. We provide care through 3 delivery methods: medical clinics, retreats, and educational training. Since we started back in 2011, we have been able to reach veterans in all 50 states and have served over 3,000 veterans through the Be Resilient program. Being resilient is a multifaceted and complex issue. We know that to find a lasting solution, we have to address the whole warrior. Many challenges cannot be solved by providing the treatments and modalities of just one component, but by tackling them all. Now, we've expanded our services to include law enforcement and first responders. Together, we can make a lasting impact in the lives of warriors across the nation. To learn more, visit our website at sofmissions.org.
For your post assignment, all units proceed to your post assignment.
All right. Welcome back.
Misfit Nation. Misfit Nation. The Misfit Nation Show.
We are a show founded by a veteran and hosted by 2 veterans and a military spouse. Our mission is to get people to tell their stories to the world. If you're an author, share your tips with the Misfit Nation. If you're a musician or an actor, our audience needs to know how they too can get into the business. Coaches, we love our coaches. Come on and share your tips with the Misfit Nation to help them become better versions of themselves. If you are a corporate leader or an entrepreneur, come on and show how you did it and how hard you have fought for success. If you are a veteran, first responder, or Gold Star family, we would love to have you come on and share your story with the Misfit Nation. We always have time for you. If you're feeling down, alone, or starting to see the darkness, stop. Think about those who are around you. You are not alone. You will be missed. If you feel like your problems will be a burden to those in your inner circle or feel embarrassed, dial 988. If you are a veteran, take option 1. We need you to keep pushing forward. Don't make a permanent solution to a temporary problem. If you are a new listener, welcome to the Misfit Nation Show. Be sure to subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast app. Also on our YouTube channel at @the_Misfit Nation. Subscribe and click the bell to keep you up to date on our latest episodes and all of our news. You can also find us on Heroes Media Group and About Face Radio. Now, let's get to the show!
All right. Welcome back to the Misfit Nation Show. It's your Thursday after dinner edition in the chat. Steven's in there to answer your questions in there, and I'll be here live on the mic and to be with you. Thanks for taking your time to rack up your frequent flyer miles tonight and hang out with us. We have a great guest tonight, but first, let's pay homage to another lost officer. Trooper Nicholas P. Caton, Ohio State Highway Patrol, Ohio. End of watch, Thursday, October 16th, 2025. Let's keep that trooper's family, his friends, his peers in your thoughts and prayers, his community, as they go through this sudden change. They know every day they go to work, it's a risk, but they don't want to have to deal with this. So keep them in your thoughts and prayers as this change envelops their lives. Now, our guest tonight, he's a physician and a third generation Air Force veteran with over 25 years of service, including 6 deployments where he treated wounded service members and led medical teams. He joined the Air National Guard as a medical student and went on to serve as a physician at the Veterans Health Administration. He's a leading expert in osteopathic medicine at Orlando College and currently serves as the Florida State Air Surgeon. And right now, he is also running for Congress in Florida 15. So without further ado, let's welcome Darren McAuley to the Misfit Nation show. Welcome, Darren.
Hi, how are you? Thanks so much for having me.
No problem. I was trying not to trip over osteopathy since that's it's a $12 word for me here at the Misfit Nation. But hopefully I got it right.
Close enough. Get that all the time.
Thank you. I hope you had a great day today. We didn't get the time to talk in the green room due to technical glitches getting you in here, but it's great to have you here. And I want you to tell the Misfit Nation a little bit more about you, more than that elevator pitch I just gave about you, and let them know more about you and where you came from and how we got here today.
Well, I'm a pain management physician by training. I did an osteopathic manual medicine residency and a sports medicine fellowship. I actually started working at the VA because I had been in the military at that point for about 15 years. I joined the Air National Guard, as you mentioned in my intro, when I was a third-year medical student. I was recruited into the Guard by the dean of my medical school, and I find that as somebody who does a lot of recruiting now for the Guard, I wind up being a walking poster for the Air National Guard everywhere I go, especially teaching at a medical school. But that's a more common path than we give it credit for, especially with professionals, right? So doctors, lawyers, chaplains, these are usually folks who get a warm handoff. Somebody in your life that you already trust, that you work with, who's in the Guard, winds up being what I think of as a Guard ambassador. And they bring you into the fold. You see through their example what's possible, and then you wind up joining the military. In my particular case, my grandfather and both of my uncles on my mother and my father's side had been in the military before me. So when I was approached by my dean, myself and one of my really good friends, I said, wow, well, that sounds a lot like what Poppy, that's what I used to call my grandfather, what he talked about. And I remembered how proud he was of his military service, how he talked about how it gave him the opportunity to go places and meet people that he would have never ever met before. And really how pride is the best word, how proud he was of it, that he had the ability to really contribute to America's success. And I said, you know what, I want some of that too. Now, I was also young. I was in medical school. I was a second-year medical student at the time that they reached out to me. It took about a year to get in. I joined my third year. So like every other young professional student, I was also really into the idea of, the GI Bill and possibly one day a VA home loan and getting paid 1 weekend a month to work. But that only really works. That kind of recruitment pitch only works when you're young and you're broke. 25 years later, you're still serving for that cause that my grandfather and my uncle spoke of. The pride of being able to do something for your country, the people that you get to work with, working with the finest people in the world, and knowing that you're really making a difference in the country. So after having done that, I was teaching at a different medical school for about 15 years in the Guard. I came upon the opportunity to work at the VA, and I said, wow, so 1 week in the month, and when I deploy, I get to work with people in uniform, and then as a pain management physician, I get to work in the VA, actually taking care of folks who've borne that stress of battle, and it seemed like a perfect fit. So I joined the VA 10 years ago here in Florida. I've been in a couple different VAs, a couple different programs, transferred, got promoted, etc. And then I wound up having to leave the VA in order to run for this seat. You can't be a full-time federal employee and run for office due to the Hatch Act. But to be honest, I still do miss it a little bit. I miss the folks that I worked with and some of the folks at the job, but I'm running to try to make the country a better place for them now by getting them more benefits.
I'm sorry about that if you got unmuted. But Florida is a state where we have a lot of veterans. I've served with a lot of people from Florida, from all over Florida. I didn't realize how big Florida was when I first joined the military until I met so many people from different places in Florida. And they would say, oh, it would take 6 hours to get from here to here in Florida. I said, no way. It's one state. There's no way that can happen, until I finally drove down to see my aunt that lives there. And I had to stop to take a long rest because I was passing out driving. I said, there's no way this state is this big. But it makes sense when you see how many people from that state join our military to serve this country. And like you said, do it for the pride of serving our country. And of course, you get those benefits later. You might have signed up for that GI Bill in the beginning, but as you go through the career, you find out all the better things about it. And I think that's what happened with you as well.
100%. But I mentioned that because I think that it's important that we don't lose sight of that. We really do need to put a lot into recruitment that entails some of those things that will entice younger folks when they're at a certain stage of life, right? And you introduce them to military service, introduce them to military culture, and as they grow, both professionally and personally, they will stay. But sometimes you need a little bit of a carrot to get them in the first place, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with thinking about your family and thinking about your future and deciding that you want to do something honorable. So we need to sweeten the pot as much as we can, and it's always a worthwhile investment. You're right about a lot of military people being in Florida. I mean, it's the third most populous state, fourth largest economy in the United States. So there's a lot of people here. But even more so than just people in uniform who come here, whether they're Guard, Reserve, or active duty that have PCS'd here, there's a lot of veterans here. My district in particular, in CD15, we have 50,000 veterans just in this one district alone. When I used to work for the caregiver support program that was VISN 8 everywhere from Puerto Rico all the way up to South Georgia, we had the biggest VISN and the largest number of veterans in the country. So people come here and then they want to retire here. They PCS here and they never leave. So we have contractors and people who no longer are in uniform but still working for the federal government in some capacity, or people who get out altogether and they go into the private sector, or they just kick their feet up, but they still have that military service in their background and they're still here in the Sunshine State with us.
Definitely. My best friend since second grade, he retired from the Air Force and lives in Navarre now. We both grew up in New Jersey. He lives in Navarre. I have a couple cousins that moved down there and stayed there. And my godmother moved from the Northeast down there to stay there as well. So there is a lure to stay down there. And I think there's a lot of great people down in Florida. And there's many different things you can do in Florida. It's not just beaches. There's other things in Florida as well.
I mean, we have beaches, we have cuisine, we have our theme parks. The weather itself, I mean, just going out to the park with my kids, you can't go out to the park with your kids in November in New York or New Jersey, I mean, without bringing a coat, right? So, but we go out and ride bikes and they play around all day, pretty much all seasons here, right? It gets a little cold for maybe 2 or 3 months. And by a little cold, I mean Florida cold, like 70, right? So that is a huge magnet to people all over the country who want to relax and enjoy their environment. Then we have not just the outdoors, but outdoor sports here as well. So there's plenty of reasons why people come to Florida and they stay.
Yeah, and the sheer beauty, you could see sunrise and sunset across the coast. It's amazing there. We've only been down there a few times, me and my wife, and every time we've been there, we had a great time and enjoyed it. My boss lives there. He talks about that Florida cold stuff all the time. When I tell him it's like 40 here in Tennessee, he's always pretty cold here. I put a hoodie on today. It was 65. I said, oh, great, wonderful, lovely. But that's just his way of rubbing it into us. But let's talk more about the things you got to do in service. Let's go into those 6 deployments. Where were your deployments to?
I went all over. So I went to Iraq twice. Those were my first 2. Then I went to Turkey and flew a lot of missions into Syria, Africa, Saudi Arabia, COVID, of course, like every other Air National Guard physician or National Guard physician. And those are just federal deployments, federal activations. I've had some state activations here as well. Big one being both of the hurricanes that came to Tampa Bay last year. Myself and every other National Guardsman had the honor and distinction of going out to help our community. So that was an interesting one. I've been in the Air National Guard in a couple different states, and it was the first time when not only was the disaster coming to your state, so you're getting activated as it's coming to your state, but it's coming to your neighborhood. And, that's touch and go. That's kind of, that's an interesting feeling to know that, okay, so I do want to go out and help my community, of course, but I'm actively leaving my family. I'm leaving my kids, my wife. They don't have any of their hurricane preparations set up. And I'm kind of going on a moment's notice to head out and take care of my community. So fortunately, another great thing about the Air National Guard is it's a family. And I know people from all over the states who have also served in the Guard. I'm not sure if it is the smallest. The Coast Guard Reserve might have us in terms of the actual smallest, but it is a pretty small component and segment of the DoD. So your circle and your sphere of influence concentrically in terms of people you meet who know other people that you meet again in the future, when you're in a relatively small organization, can really be exasperating at some point. So I had friends that were in the Georgia Guard who are driving to drill every month, or in the Pennsylvania Guard who are flying to drill, but they live here in Florida. And I was able to say, hey, bro, I got to leave. I'm not going to be able to come back home. Can you help my wife put up the storm shutters? Can you help her get the lawn furniture in? Can you make sure that, they have everything they need? Because I'm not going to be there. And, that's the kind of friendships that you have, the kind of bonds that you have with people where I don't even think it was a phone call, to be honest. It was a text where you send somebody a text and you're like, look, I need you to take care of my family. And it's done.
That's kind of the nuance of the military. You wind up with a whole other family for life, and you can send a text at whatever time, and you'll just get a response saying whose car we're taking or what time we have to be there to get things done, just like what happened with you. That's one of the beauties of being in the service. No matter what branch you're in, you wind up with those friendships for life. And like you said, your friends were in different guard units in different states, but they still lived in Florida and were able to help you. That's a great network to have, because when it happens to the state they're activating in, then you have to be able to be there in Florida to help their families in case anything happens there too.
100%. And that's that, you kind of hit the nail on the head. It's not like I need to explain it. I'm like, look, going on state active duty, I'm not going to be, can you help me out? I didn't even get a response until like I'm on my way,
I'm almost there. Yeah. I just stopped for gas. Thanks. During your service, which of those deployments was probably your toughest time outside of the country?
Definitely my first one. So I think your first deployment is always weird because you don't really know what to expect. But my first deployment was to Iraq when it was a little hot there too. So that was the closest that I've ever come to like direct combat as a flight surgeon, where you are getting shelled, you're getting mortared, flying patients out, and people are taking pock shots at you in the helicopter. That was definitely the roughest, but it was also something I just didn't feel like I was emotionally ready for. And, everybody joins the military. You think that you're going to deploy at some point. Also, you're seeing the war on the news every day and you're wearing a uniform. So part of you is like, I'm ready to go. I want to go. I'm a physician. I want to help people. And then when it happens, it always happens more sudden than you think it's going to. It's like, all right, so you're leaving in 2 months. And you say, okay, well, I have 2 months to get ready. And then it seems like you go to bed, you wake up the next day, and it's like, all right, you're leaving in 4 days. And you're like, I have all this list of things I wanted to do, things I need to get ready, people I wanted to talk to. And then the next thing you know, you're on a plane for 4 days. So that was definitely the toughest one. But I would also say that it was really one of the most fulfilling. I learned so much about myself. I learned so much about the Air Force. I'm like what we call a guard baby. So I joined the Air National Guard. I was never active duty. I've been activated, right? I've been activated 6 times, but I joined the Air National Guard. I was never active duty. So when you join the Guard, you really do work within your own command. You work within your own base. And you go to training, obviously, sometimes in other parts of CONUS. But you're pretty much, your experience is dictated by what happens in the confines of your state. And there are some people that, are guard babies and they never really go anywhere but one state. They stay on one unit their whole lives. So their entire military experience is on the confines of one base, minus training that they go to from here and there. And that is also an interesting mindset. But when I left, it was my first time beyond flight school and SEER and those types of trainings, ever really experiencing Big Blue. And it was like, wow, this is why we're learning all the stuff that we're supposed to learn. Like living on the flight line and being exposed to all those different aircraft and seeing how all the AFSCs work together, and really being a part of the military machine. I mean, that was fascinating. And I learned so much about the Air Force. I learned, I was an attending physician, but I learned a lot about medicine as well. You're constantly learning about medicine, and battlefield medicine is its own specialty. So even though it was stressful at times, scary at times, it was also a really good experience.
I like to tell people that when I was in war, the best signs that we ever seen if we had wounded was when the Pedros would come in, the Air Force pararescue dudes would come to help us, because you knew they would fly no matter what, and they would jump out. They'd be armed and able to take care of you, so you wouldn't have to really pull that much security for them because they were able to do it themselves, and you knew they'd always come if you called them. So that was one of the shining lights of being in combat in the Mount Sac and Afghanistan, or down in the valleys in Kandahar as well. They were always the first ones we'd call to come help us, and it was great to see them when they came over the mountain or came over to the horizon.
100%. Knowing that you were going to be able to make that kind of a difference in someone's life is satisfying for the provider too. Flying people from, say, their air base to the hospital in Iraq, to a higher level of care, always a little nerve-wracking going over the wire. But at the same time, you know that if you don't go, that person's not going to have the outcome that they want and that their family wants. And you just do what you got to do. When it's over and you look back at it, you get a minute to reflect, and you're like, wow, I was able to really impact that many people's lives. And God forbid if I wasn't there for whatever reason, because I was at a different part of the AOR, or I never joined the military in the first place, or I was injured myself, what would have happened to that patient, So it's a profound experience, a humbling experience. I feel blessed. I've deployed multiple times, some pretty hairy places, and always come back without my own injury. So that's something that being in the medical field in particular makes you keenly aware of, right? I'm living in the same space, eating the same food, and being on the same, on the same base where people are getting injured. And I was very fortunate and blessed to never have to worry about that in my own personal body. So that's the other thing. Like sometimes when you talk about your deployments, I try to skirt around the edges a little bit, because other people have different experiences. They've seen things that they bring back with them, and it really affects how they interact with their family or their friends afterwards, and it affects their job prospects. And some people come back with devastating injuries, and they have to battle with that for years. So it feels, or for life. So it feels odd sometimes to say that my deployment was a good experience, and I don't want to put my experience out there as if I'm belittling someone else's. But that first trip to Baghdad was very hairy, but it was also really maturing for a young officer. It kept me in the Air Force and pushed me forward. I wouldn't be a colonel today if I hadn't done that first deployment. I see a lot of physicians and JAGs sometimes that are hesitant to go out. And if you play the game right, you can always be there, a day late and a dollar short for the people who are going out the door. But I encourage every young officer I can deploy, see what the Air Force is really doing, understand the mission, really do your job outside of CONUS, outside of where it's safe. You will have a tremendous understanding of what the Air Force is really about, what the DoD is really about. It will make you a better officer, make you a better person, and you will bring that back with you so that when you do come back home, you're now operating and functioning on a higher level.
Exactly. And I think the growing that you do, like you said on your first deployment, how much you were able to absorb and learn and grow on that deployment, you can't measure. It's not really a measurement for it, but in ourselves, we can see how much we grow, not just as people, as humans, as leaders. You can see everything you learned, all the training that you go through. And like for you, all the medical training you went through, maybe some of it you thought maybe it won't work if we go to combat, but you got to actually test it and do it there. Not many physicians get to do the things you've done in a forward deployed area with the injuries that you definitely going to see over there compared to what you see in the States. So you have a whole other mindset, a whole other skill set that you can bring to the table and teach future doctors like you're doing now in the medical school?
It also teaches you something about yourself, right? And I, not to be too philosophical, but it really does make you value life, value time, value time with your family. Just recognizing, like I said, that things are much more vulnerable than and much more fragile than you tend to think ahead of time. When you're young, I mean, at the time, I think I was 31, and 31's not 21, but you still feel invincible, and you still can't envision 41 or 51. But a little time in the AOR makes you realize that you are not invincible, and you really need to slow down and enjoy every moment, savor every taste. When you see your family and you haven't really communicated with them that you love them, do it right that second, because life can change, and all changes are not for the worst, but it can change and put you in a position where you can't do today what you thought you were going to do tomorrow. So do it today.
Exactly. And like the famous Ferris Bueller said, life moves very fast. Sometimes you got to stop and spin around to see what's going on so you don't miss something.
True
And I
that.
think that's what a lot of us did for the 20 years of GWAT. All we were doing was looking forward to our next trip. Look forward to our next trip. We weren't really staring around at what was around us or valuing what was around us until after our last trip, or the one where we said, that's it, we're done. Then we started to really absorb our families and be present in their lives. But sometimes it was too late for many of our brothers and sisters. They already lost their families because they were so focused on that next trip. Have you seen a lot of that within the Guard? Because I know the Guard has been activated a lot over the whole GWAT, and of course now with all the natural disasters in our country.
Well, I think that it depends on your AFSC, your job title. I do remember there was one pilot out in Turkey. I was out there. We were flying missions all over the AOR, and I was having one of my family members was having some issues medically, and my time to leave was coming up, and they offered for me to extend or asked me to extend, and I'm normally the kind of person who would say yes, but I said, look, no, I can't. I can't do another month. If that other flight doc can come out here, he needs to come. I have to get back home. And there were a couple guys who were a little irritated by that. It's like, hey, look, we flew out together. We got to stay. You should stay with us. And I was able to weather that. I got thick skin. It is what it is. But there was one pilot who came up to me and he said, I recognize that you got to go home, and, you're doing the right thing. And I said, well, thanks, man. I really appreciate that, bro. There's always got to be family first. And he said, who are you telling? Like, I've been divorced twice, and I love that plane. I love this job, but you give up a lot. And if you have the chance, you have the opportunity to make a real decision about, this is my family versus, staying out here. You can always come back out here, but you only get one family. And, I really took that to heart, that he went out of his way to approach me and tell me that. But it was also kind of like, wow, I mean, you think about the sacrifices that people make, and we were just talking about being deployed and combat, etc. But you don't want one of those sacrifices to be your wife or your kids, your relationship with your friends or your parents. So you really do have to put the work in to maintain that. Now, the other side of that same coin, especially with your spouse, is that they need to feel like they're a part of it. So, I was in the military long before I got married. But when my wife married me, she knew that she was marrying somebody that was all in for the military. And that was she had the ability to kick the tires on that type of life and see if it was something that she could tolerate, see if it was something that she wanted. And then she chose to marry a military officer. My kids, they didn't get that choice. They just got dad. So, when my kids need me to be somewhere, when they need me to break away, I remember that like, this was your choice, not theirs. And you really have to do what you have to do to be a dad.
Exactly. I think the thing that broke me in half is right after I retired, my daughter wrote an article for the Platform magazine. It was titled "Life of the Military Brat." Like you said, she didn't have a choice; she was born into it. And she wrote in there, and the part of it, she said, "I know I had a dad. There was a picture, but he was never around. He was always gone. He wasn't at my games. He wasn't here, and it just ripped me apart to know that that's how I did what I did to her by putting the service so far ahead of them, thinking I had to do everything for the service first. And now, 10 years later, after retired, our relationship's 100% better, and our family's doing great. But knowing that I did that to her and my wife, it really ripped me up inside.
Oh, that's phenomenal, brother, that you were able to put the time in on the back end and put things back together. I mean, I do recognize I have a 9-year-old and 5-year-old twins, right? And, so seeing where my 9-year-old is now, I know, like, I can remember that my twins were there just 4 years ago, right? But I don't know where she's going to be in another 4 years, even though they'll be where she is. So it kind of keeps you hungry to say, I don't want to miss this stuff. But it's impossible not to miss some of it. It just is. Like when you're deployed, I mean, I've been deployed for Christmases, and more than one, more than one Christmas, more than one birthday, my birthday, everybody's birthday, my wife, my oldest daughter, the twins, every holiday, Thanksgiving. And it's just impossible to really lean in without giving up some of those things. And when you're young and you're joining because, you're thinking about all the great things that you're going to be able to do and all the great places you're going to be able to go, and an actual pride of service, you don't recognize those sacrifices that you will have to make and that your family will have to make. I mean, even if you have a family, as a young person with a family, your kids are probably fairly young, right? So it's not until they get to be 9, 10, 11, and 12, 13, I guess, is even going to be worse. I see that in some of my other friends because they'll be more vocal about poking you.
Yes.
That's when it really hits you like, oh, wow, I can't miss any more of this time. So, I'm at a weird crossroads, having been in for 25 years. I'm the state air surgeon for Florida. I'm the highest ranking physician in the state. I could stay in this billet probably another 2 years or so until my replacement is all up to speed. Or I could try to transfer and stay and get into another billet, stay in the guard for maybe another 5. I mean, I'm not going to get MSD out for years, right? But I think what's probably, and I've said this for the last 5 after I hit 20, but what's probably going to push me out is every bit of time with them becomes that much more precious. And, as a physician, I'm already fairly busy. Now I'm running for Congress too. And that is another form of service, like, taking off my boots and putting on a pair of loafers, still trying to serve the American people, but more as a statesman than as an officer. But it also takes a tremendous amount of time. And time is that one commodity that you burn it, you can't get it back. You can't really save it for the future. And you never really know exactly how you're going to be called to spend it. So given that that's the time, is kind of the main pressure, eventually that's what's going to make me retire. It's not going to be the PT test. I can still run the PT test. It's not going to be not wanting to deploy. And it's definitely not going to be wanting to push America forward and be the tip of the spear. It's going to be that, my daughters and my son need me at home. My wife looks at me and says, it'd be a whole lot easier if I wasn't a single parent 3-4 months out of the year. And it's kind of like that's what's going to wind up making me pull the tab.
That's like a dagger right there. It would be a lot easier if I wasn't a single parent for 4 months out of the year. So that has to hurt a little bit. But like you said, time is constant. We can't stop time. And sometimes it's and what you're trying to do now, getting to Congress, that's going to take even more of your time because
Correct.
there's so many people going to be trying to grabbing at you, trying to talk to you, try to get you to listen to them and maybe lean their way, whatever they're advocating for. It takes a lot of time away from not just your family, but everything you want to do in life. So there's a lot of decisions that have to come with this stumbling block that's about to happen in front of you.
It's a
With
sacrifice.
that, the
When
sacrifice is nuts. Yeah.
Thank you for your service as a serviceman. You understand it, right? In their minds, it's being deployed and being in combat and the possibility of getting injured, right? But when servicemen hear that, really the sacrifice and what the sacrifice of your service is the time away from your family. I mean, that's one thing that just about everybody shares. And just in running for office, not having been elected yet, recognizing that I'm doing it because I want to do the right thing for my country. I want to do the right thing for Tampa Bay. I want to actually make people's lives easier by reducing their cost of living so that they can take care of their families. That also takes time. And to me, it's easy to equate giving up time to work to help other people, work to help my community here in America, whether I'm wearing a suit or a flight suit. It's still the same sacrifice.
100%. And with the guard for you specifically, is it a point system to retire or is it just years?
It's both. I mean, you do have to make 20 years, but I'm past 20, and then you get a differential for each of the amount of points that you have. So it's kind of I didn't recognize it until later on in my career, but it really does incentivize doing more active duty time, right? So the more classes you go to, the more deployments you do, and obviously the more drills you make, those are all points that add up towards your retirement. And then you can take off up to 3 months at a time of the mandatory retirement age for active duty time after 2008. I believe that was something that George Bush signed into law. So after 2008, if you do 3 months of active duty, that time comes off of your retirement age so that you can collect a bit earlier.
So it makes it a little more understandable for me on the active side. I always heard people say I got to have X amount of years, X amount of points. It has some equation to retire. And that kind of helps me out to understand it a little better.
You have to have a calculator to really figure it out, like a calculator and one of those visor hats to sit down and figure out your retirement. But
pocket protector.
I've thought, because I know folks who have done it, physicians and PAs, that I would just keep going until they kick me out. And that's as close as I'm going to get to a active duty retirement, is I just keep going until they're like, look, you're too old, you have to leave. And that will probably be when I can collect my pension the next month. But like I said, that was before the kids were born. And now I recognize it might be a bit earlier.
Right. We've got a couple questions from the audience in the chat right now. So I'll pop the first one up.
Shoot.
Waiting on Helen wants to know what inspired you to transition from military service and medicine into public office. Thank you, Waiting on Helen.
So I don't really think there was anything that was within my military service that inspired me to transition to public office. It was really just seeing the cuts at the VA. So it was more being a civilian federal employee that made me say, I have to get into office. So I worked for the caregiver support program, but I still saw patients in the Tampa Bay area. And, that first round of Doge cuts was really tough on all federal employees, but I had a front row seat to what was happening at the VA. They fired quite a few people that were not directly involved in patient care. So whether that was the, HAS staff who perform our scheduling, security, EMS that does some of the cleaning, HR, all the other types of personnel management. So then all of a sudden, if you needed to get something done, you couldn't get it done. And there were days when I went into work and the patients were overbooked. You go in at 8 a.m. and there's 3 people waiting there to see you. At least 2 people are going to be upset, right? Because I can't see 3 people at the same time. I remember one day I just finished doing an injection as a pain management physician. Ultrasound guided injections were kind of my bread and butter. And I just finished injecting a patient's hip. I went to put the needle, a 3-inch needle with blood on it now, in the sharps container. And I opened it and like 2 other bloody needles popped out because nobody was there to empty the sharps container, or at least to take it away and throw it away and then replace it with a new one. And then I think the straw that broke the camel's back was one day I went to work. It was like a Friday. I managed to get out a bit earlier, so I was really hoping to beat the traffic. I didn't get to say goodbye to one person in particular that I knew in HAS who I was really friendly with. And when you schedule a doctor's patients, you and that doctor are now bonded, right? That's the person they have the option to double book you, to put somebody that they know is going to be really difficult right before your lunch or the last patient of the day, instead of talking that person to moving into an easier slot. You really have to work together as a team to be efficient. So you know your schedulers, and if you're happy at your job as a physician, you get along with them. And I didn't get to say goodbye because I was rushing out to try to beat traffic. I got home to find out that they were fired. And it was
Wow.
like, I didn't even get to say goodbye, right? And it was just one of those things where it was random, like it didn't seem to make any sense. And then at the same time, so seeing that it was harder and harder and it was having a demoralizing effect on the agency, but watching what it did to our patients. So, the people that our tax dollars are supposed to be going to serve, not just the servants, a new patient visit went from a month to 10 weeks. Vets would be furious that they couldn't get disability exams. And then the privatization of that process of disability exams meant that, I think some of these companies get a little extra money if they see more patients more, in a more rapid fashion. And the easiest way to do that is to reject people. I worked for the caregiver support program, and it was getting a bit more difficult for us to do our jobs as well. So, not all patients were getting the exact same caregiver support, and caregiver support is really your family, how your family is able to be taken care of by the VA, whether it's respite, training, or actual money. Being a caregiver is difficult, and giving a caregiver the time off to relax, to watch a movie on our own, sleep a little bit extra, go spend time with family, those are valuable resources. And to be honest, it angered me as a veteran, as somebody who's worked with people in uniform for years, to see the vets in Tampa Bay being treated that way. And I think it was a combination of that last straw, where I did not get to say goodbye to my friend before she got fired, and getting those emails, send me an email, tell me 5 things that you did that were useful last week. And I'm like, I'm seeing patients all day. I'm a quadruple board certified physician, injecting people and prescribing narcotics. And I got to answer an email from some 18-year-old 1,500 miles away about what I did that was useful. The point of that was to be disrespectful. And I felt disrespected. So does everyone else who worked in the federal government. And I said, enough is enough. I gotta turn this around.
I know for me, getting the VA appointment, I tore my quad the day before Father's Day. So June, whatever day that was. And because the VA was so backed up, they couldn't get me in to see even physiotherapy until September 30th because of that. So I had to go on my own out to the community to get help to get my quad back aligned and start to work it back into health. I couldn't wait that long.
So, in Tampa Bay at the Tampa VA, one of the things that was hit the worst by the Doge cuts was mental health, right? And I saw the ad kind of commercial that you did ahead of time for folks who were in crisis. The fact that mental health would be hit the worst, hit with the hammer the hardest when you're cutting an organization, and that it is not a secret. It is well known that veterans have physical problems, and they have a higher population of amputees, et cetera. You see people who have degenerative wear and tear of the musculoskeletal system because of the pace of working in the DoD. But it's also a well-known fact that the scars of battle sometimes affect the mind and the spirit as well as the body. So that a mental health appointment would go from 4 weeks to 6 months, more than 180 days now at the Tampa VA. That's just the kind of thing that is unacceptable. And you recognize that, of course, everybody who works for the federal government, as you well know, will tell you that there is some level of, if not waste and abuse, or if not fraud, waste and abuse, right? I mean, people don't always spend money like they should when it's not their money. And there needs to be a penalty for that. And you need to have people spend tax dollars as if it's coming out of their own bank account. I believe that. But the way to go about that is not necessarily to go about it the way we did, where we really took the fury out on the people who work there and didn't pay enough attention to what that was going to do to the veterans themselves. A veteran who is thinking about harming themselves, who is depressed, who's not able to spend the time with their families that they want to because of PTSD, because of depression, because of anxiety. They shouldn't have to wait 180 plus days for an appointment.
True statement. And I've I've also had to use community care for mental health for most of my time out of the service because of the wait. The wait's been so long
Yeah.
since 2015. It's been horrible in Tennessee, especially. It's a horrible thing. But a couple more questions came up while we were talking there. I'm gonna try to find them here. This one is from Harris BPA. As Florida State Air Surgeon, what are your top priorities for improving veterans healthcare? I think you just hit some of them on top of the head there, but
So, as a state air surgeon, that's a military role. I don't really have much to do with veterans healthcare. So, the state air surgeon is there really is no analog in the active duty world. It is a 06 billet, so it's usually a colonel or a lieutenant colonel who's about to be a colonel that functions as a liaison between our headquarters and National Guard Bureau and medical in DC, right? So basically, in terms of accessions and waiver packages to make sure that we're getting transfers and new commissionings and new enlistments in from other states and also from sister services, whether it's active duty, Army, Air, Marines, etc. I have to approve all those packages. I approve difficult waivers. If folks have, medical conditions that require a waiver, I approve those and send them on to Guard Bureau. And I also act as kind of this go-between for information stemming from DC that is going to be distributed statewide if it's a medical concern. Now, being in medical and in the military, and then also having worked for the VA, I do wind up counseling quite a few of the people that I work with in the military about things related to getting VA care, to making an appointment. I get tons of questions about VA disability, but that's just because people know that I'm a doctor who worked at the VA for 10 years. It doesn't really have much to do with being the state air surgeon.
of course they know you're in the system, so they figure you can help them out. So it's awesome
Correct.
that they use you as part of their network.
Facts.
Another one from this is from Lickety Split 87. What lessons from your Air Force career guide your philosophy on service and policy? Thank you, Lickety Split.
So I think the principal lesson from my Air Force career that guides me, not just in service, but in policy, and this is something that I think every person in the DoD can relate to, is that you can do so much more than you're aware of. It's just the tip of the iceberg. What you think you can do is literally just the tip of the iceberg. You can really go like David Goggins on almost any task and just continue to press and lean forward. And when you're tired, when it hurts, just keep going. And as long as you continue, you're doing more than you thought you could. And once you get into the zone where you recognize that is a state of being, like a way of life, a way of looking at the world, a way of looking at challenges, you've really unlocked quite a bit of that potential within yourself. So I think oftentimes with policy, you see the two camps, right? Whether it's Democrat, Republican, and they get into an individual position and then they cannot find a way to work it out with the opposing camp. And that some of that's ideological, some of that's a lack of trust, some of that's past experience. Some of that's other stakeholders, right? Whether it's other people in their campaign apparatus in their party, or even to a greater extent their constituents themselves. We're seeing that right now with the government shutdown, where we have this North Pole and South Pole of the magnet that are just repelling each other instead of actually trying to work together. And I think that recognizing from military service that when you're in the military, you don't really know the political leanings of the other people that are around you, and you're still able to accomplish things. You're still able to get the mission done. You're still able to work together to make sure that the enemy doesn't have the advantage. And if you do that while you're in elected office as well, if you take off the D, if you take off the R, and it's just a suit and it's just two Americans that are trying to do the best thing they can for the American people, trying to do the best thing they can for the people of Tampa Bay, then you'll be able to reach solutions that you wouldn't have reached because you would have stopped yourself and limited your potential by playing that team game.
Say amen to that right there. And I think a lot of that stems from our guest. I think last week she came on and said we didn't have these problems as much in the past because everyone from Congress and the Senate lived in D.C. So they might have argued and did that political theater in the House, but then they'd go out to eat together and talk things out. Now, most of them don't live there anymore. They come to vote and leave, or that's it. So it's hard to keep those relationships up when they don't talk to each other outside of the chambers. So
And looking at the other person as if they're the enemy,
right.
not recognizing, like I said, that they're just an American who wants the same thing you do, but really thinks that you can get there a different way. And I do think that there's, you do have some not so good faith actors in politics, right? I don't know if everybody always has the best interest of the other party at heart. So you take party out of it and say, look, what's the best thing for the American people? Can we get the American people, cheaper health care that's of better quality? Can we get the American people money back in their pockets by lowering the cost of food or lowering the cost of home building materials? Can we improve schools so that children get a better education and they can get better jobs? Can we make streets safer by making sure that we have public safety officers and cops that are well funded and well trained? And if you work on individual problems and not work on, partisan agenda, you could meet people in the middle a lot more than you give yourself credit for.
I say that all the time on the show. You can sit down and have coffee with somebody you believe is polar opposite from you, and you both want to do the same thing, make your community better, make your neighborhood better, whatever it is, but you have different approaches. You both want the same thing. You want success for your community. You want your community to thrive. Talk it out. Have a Coke and talk it out, or have a coffee, whatever you do, whatever makes you happy that day, have that and talk it out, and you'll feel better about it that you both want the same thing.
One of the odd things about running for Congress rather is that you reach out to folks in your own sphere first, right? And that felt very odd to me, reaching out to friends and family for support. And of course, being in the military for 25 years, so many of my friends are military folks. And, time and time again, I would reach out to someone and it's like, we never really talked too much politics, but I could kind of tell that they're Republican or Republican leaning independents. And they would say, well, Darren, I don't, I'm not a Democrat and I would never really support a Democrat. I never voted for a Democrat, but I'll support you, because I know that you want to do the right thing for people. I know you want to do the right thing for Americans. And my retort to that was always, well, I'm blessed. I feel blessed and proud that you would, I would be the first Democrat that you would support. But, you got to give other Democrats the benefit of the doubt too, brother. Like, everybody wants the best thing for the American people. But I realized very early in the process of campaigning that it's about getting that across to people. It's about having them understand you enough to trust you, where yes, we don't agree on everything, but we do agree that doing the best thing for our communities and for our families is the goal. And if people are good faith actors that really want to do the best thing for their family, for your family, your community, their community, then you can trust them to act as such, even though you're unaware of what the problems will be in the future. That's the other thing. We ask people what they would do about X, Y, and Z problem, about what's happening right now or what's happened in the past. But that's not always a barometer of how they're going to act in the future. The values that they hold and the values that they bring to the table, that's a better barometer of how they're going to act in the future, regardless of what the future problems are.
Exactly. That's awesome. And that'll transition us into our last two questions from me to you as we start to close out here. First, I'll say thank you for taking your time tonight to share your story, share your vision for Florida 15 with us in a great way. The way you're sharing it, you almost sound like you are an independent when you're talking. So that's what we need on the Hill when people go up there, to be able to reach both sides and talk and maybe choke slam people together to make them talk to each other. That'd be awesome. But my two questions to you, Darren: how can the Misfit Nation contact you if they just want to chat with you like we just did tonight, or maybe if they just want to pick your brain about getting into service?
They can reach me at darrenforflorida.com, DARRENFOR Florida.com. You can send once you go to the website, you can send an email through the website. You can sign up to help out, and we will definitely contact you. You have all the information about myself, my campaign, and my past, all there on the website itself.
Outstanding. The website is going across the bottom of the screen for those of you watching this on video. It's in the comments for those of you on live right now, and it will be in the description when we post this onto audio later. And our final question, Darren, I asked this to all my guests as we're about to close out. What's 3 things the Misfit Nation can start doing tomorrow to make them better humans?
I think the 3 things would be take care of yourself, take care of your family, and take care of your country, right? So if you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not getting decent sleep, going to the gym, trying to stay away from the excesses of foods that are nutritious and alcohol, tobacco, that kind of stuff out of line, your body's not going to be operating where it needs to be. And you have to take care of yourself so that you have reserve in the tank to give to other people. You got that reserve because you're trying to take care of yourself, take care of your community. And I mean, that could be something like I'm doing, running for office. It could be just being nice to a coworker. It could be volunteer activity, like volunteering at the polls. It could be a grassroots organization where you volunteer at a soup kitchen. But when you do things for other people, honestly, just because you want to make them feel better, you want to brighten their lives, it really rejuvenates your spirit more than it does theirs. I believe that. You can use your church or your other religious organization sometime as a springboard to find areas where you can direct that energy. And when you give to other people, you get back more than you gave. And then lastly, like I said, give to your country. There are ways that you can serve America, whether you're not in the physical position to be able to join the DOD, or you've been in the DOD before. You can still volunteer at the USO. You can volunteer at the VA. You can volunteer with your local elected officials. You can work for the federal government. It's really going to take every gun in the fight to continue to push America forward and make sure that we are the shining city on the hill. Make sure that we're the most powerful nation in the world. Thinking that just because we are powerful, just because we do have economic might, that it's always going to stay that way. If we don't all as individuals push to it and push to achieve that, is its own form of hubris. So I would say, take care of yourself, take care of your community, and take care of your country.
Outstanding. 3 great ones, Darren. Again, Darren, thank you for sharing tonight your story, your journey, and your vision for Florida 15 as you go towards the polls. I'm not sure when the election day is there for you guys down there, but good luck to you in your campaign, and make sure you, like you said earlier, spend time with your family as you go through this roller coaster of a campaign and life.
For sure, brother. Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for taking the time to let me introduce myself to your audience. And thanks for your poignant questions, brother.
Appreciate you. Misfit Nation, thanks for hanging out tonight. As always, tomorrow is a better day with you than it is without you. Do not make a permanent decision to a temporary problem. I know saying it's a temporary problem, you feel like that's a punch in the face, but those problems can go away and the sun will come up tomorrow, and that sun will be brighter with you in it. So if you need help, dial 988. Take option 1 if you're a veteran. If you don't want to take option 1, follow the prompts. We need you here. If you don't want to do that, contact us, info@themisfitnation.com, Steven@themisfitnation.com, or Jake@themisfitnation.com. And we will answer you. We'll get you on the phone, and we will take care of you until we can get someone who's a medical professional to take care of you and get you in the right headspace. Until next time, be humble, stay hungry, and keep hustling.
Thanks for checking us out and being a part of the Misfit Nation show. Don't forget to visit our website at themisfitnation.com That's themisfitnation.com. Check out all our past episodes and get some of the great Misfit Nation gear for you and your family. As always, be humble, stay hungry, and keep hustling because we are
MisFit Nation. MisFit Nation.